So excited about August's box. So if you're watching this, you may have already opened your box, but for August, we're focusing on chalk. So you have two chalkboards. There's a square one and a rectangle one. And then we are going to be using the Chalkola markers. These come recommended from Purva. She's our guest artist this month from Magical Lettering. So you'll have two different colors of chalk markers, and then you'll also have regular, just standard Crayola chalk. This is dustless Crayola chalk, so that's important to note. And then we have your Handmade Inks this month. So we have a dried pan watercolor ink, and then we have like a color shifting liquid ink. So I'll show you these towards the end. Okay, so Purva has explained in here some of the supplies and the basics of chalk lettering. We're just going to go through that a little bit and show you some of the tips and tricks with chalk lettering. Shadows, highlights are important when creating chalk designs. And then she's also got a full exemplar or alphabet here. This is going to be referred to as a serif alphabet. So these little lines that come off the letters are called serifs. And then these practice pages that she's included are going to be sans serif, meaning without serifs, so they don't have the little lines. So you can just use your chalk or a pencil to practice this just standard style. She's got all the way A through Z. And then here is another serif chalk style that we can use. So a couple different exemplars in here for you to practice and work through. So go ahead and work through that, and then we can talk a little bit about the ways we can use our chalk markers and our chalk. Okay, so the first piece that I want to show you is the chalk markers. So you use these just like paint markers, and it will have the instructions right here. Shake well with the cap on, push the tip to release pressure, and then press the tip to get the ink flowing. So I haven't used the brown one. I've used the green one. So if it's fully primed, you'll see the color all the way to the end. So I'm gonna go ahead and give the brown one a shake. And then just as it showed, you can push the tip in a couple times and then prime it so that the tip is completely coated. So you can see the brown starting to come down. I'll prime it a few more times, and then it's ready to flow. So we use chalk markers just like paint markers. They're going to be a little bit more vivid than your standard chalk, and you can get a little bit cleaner lines with them. And some chalkboards that you can't write on with regular chalk, you'll want to use this type of chalk. Some of the chalkboards you buy nowadays in craft stores have that smooth coating that the regular chalk won't work on. So those are chalk markers, pretty standard to paint pens. Another interesting tip about chalk markers, with both the Chalkola and, oh, this is like magic. I did not know this before Purva, so I'm so glad she shared this tip with us. If you pull the nib out, one side is a chisel tip, and the other side is the bullet tip. So you have your bullet tip, and then you can flip it around and use the chisel side if you're making thicker strokes in your design. So you can see it also in the green. You're just gonna pull that out, and you could flip it over and get the chisel tip. And this will work in both the Chalkola and the VersaChalk chalk markers. There's your nice chisel tip for some thicker letters, and your bullet tip. And you can order the chalk markers in different sizes. I just kind of provided a standard size for you. Now for the regular chalk, I wanted to point out again that this is dustless chalk. So when I have taken any chalk lettering classes, it's just what's been recommended. It seems to work well for chalk lettering. And a tip that just totally changed the game for me in chalk lettering is that this typical old school chalk can actually be sharpened, just like a pencil. So let me blow your minds right now if you haven't done this before. Just get a cheap sharpener and then you can just use it like a pencil sharpener. That way you're not finagling the chalk around trying to get like a sharp point. You can actually, it's going to make quite a bit of a mess, but I'll show you what you can do with that mess because you're going to need it. So there's a nice sharpened piece of chalk. So if yours ended up broken in shipping or anything like that, don't worry because I'm going to recommend that you sharpen them anyways. I prefer a little bit smaller piece anyways when I'm working with chalk. So they're still going to do the job they were intended to do, even if you have two of them. So I have this sharpener just set aside just to use for chalk. I mean, you can use whatever you have, but I mean, they're just $1 at the dollar store or whatnot. So save your chalk scraps here. And we are going to do what's called seasoning your chalkboard. So to season your chalkboard is something you're going to want to do to prep the surface. So this is a brand new chalkboard from the craft store. It's very clean and it's going to be kind of harder to write on. I mean, this chalk goes on pretty well. But for some chalkboards, or if you're using chalkboard paint, or like some slate chalkboards, like the old school style, it's going to be a little bit harder to write on. So you're going to want to season your chalkboard, and how you're going to do that, I've done this a couple different ways. I can just grab an old piece of chalk and rub it across the chalkboard so that I get some dust on it. And this is where the chalk dust is going to come in handy, because this dustless chalk isn't going to come off very well on this chalkboard. There we go. Now that I've broke through that coating, it's coming off. So you're just going to put some chalk dust on the chalkboard. And then I just take my fingertips and kind of rub it in. So basically you're turning a brand new chalkboard into a used chalkboard. If you've used chalkboards a lot, you know that a well-used chalkboard works a lot better than a brand new one. So you're just rubbing those chalk dusts in. And again, this is something you'll definitely want to do on like a true slate chalkboard, but I do it on all my chalkboards. And if I use chalk paint, like from Lowe's, and I'm chalk painting a board or whatnot, you definitely want to do this also. So you could use just the side of a piece of chalk and color it in like that. Or if I've just sharpened my chalk, this is where my little chalk dust pieces will come in handy. So I would just pour them on there and kind of rub them around and coat my board with the chalk dust. So I like this method better. You can see it gets it pretty dusty. So that's well coated. And then I would just grab a rag to kind of buff it away. I don't want it like sparkling clean, but to wipe the majority of it away. And then it is ready for your design. So I've sharpened my chalk. I've showed you how to use the chalk markers if you haven't used them before. And then we are ready to put our designs onto our chalkboard. Now, I'm not going to walk through the workbook with you this month. Sometimes I will. But this is all pretty self-explanatory. You can just grab your chalk or even a pencil and practice your serif lettering. Sorry, your sans serif, meaning without serifs. Just go through and practice. This is kind of a fun modern, style. So just go ahead and go through and practice that. If you want to flip it over to the back, you could practice some of this serif lettering. Once you have practiced, then you can go ahead and start practicing some of your designs. So the first design that Purva has given us is the All Things Are Possible, and she's done this on the square chalkboard. You can mix it up however you want, but if you want more guidance, you can follow her designs, and then this Enjoy Today with these fun doodles around on the rectangle chalkboard. And then obviously you can come up with your own designs. She's provided this really lovely page with some doodles that will work great for chalk lettering. So I'm going to walk through her steps because she's got some really great tips here in the numbered list. And then I'll just show you how I might come up with a design of my own. So this little square one I hadn't prepped yet, so I'm going to use some of that chalk dust. So I really like these chalkboards that I found for you guys, but sometimes you'll pick up a chalkboard from the craft store or wherever, and you'll realize, oh, this is writing terribly, and that's where you'll really want to make sure it's seasoned. Kind of just make sure it makes it used. Then it's a little bit easier to work with. So if you want to copy Purva's design exactly, we can do that. I'm going to show you how to do that, or you can just freehand it. To copy it exactly, you're going to rub the chalk over the back. And I'm actually going to use the colored chalk just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So you're just going to rub it over the back. It'd be the same as if you're using transfer paper. But it's like, if you don't have transfer paper, this is a fun trick. And then place it over top of your chalkboard. And then you can go over and give yourself a little bit of a guideline. If your chalk isn't pushing hard enough through the paper to leave a guideline, you're not going to be able to see this very well. It doesn't leave, it's not going to leave a super clear guideline, just enough so that you can have something to follow. So I've got a little bit of a guideline there. I'm going to use my regular chalk for this design, just following the tips that Purva has provided. And then one tip when you're working with chalk, sometimes it is handy to work from the bottom up. Otherwise, if I'm up here working, it's going to erase my design. So I think I'm just going to kind of work from the bottom up to show you how that might be done. Okay, so I've kind of got my framework, my skeleton here, and then I'm going to go in and add like my shading, this fun little arrow she does, and just start adding to the design. Chalk lettering is meant to be fun, I think. At least when I look at it, I'm like, yeah, this chalk lettering is always so just fun and playful, and you just want to have fun with it. We could use different colors here if we wanted. I'm just using the white so it shows up very nicely in the video for you guys. And then you see here how I didn't quite make my loop how I wanted to. Some things that I always have handy are just a regular eraser. So I could just use my regular eraser to take that chalk away. Or I'll also keep a Q-tip handy as well. And that can just clear up some chalk if you've got it going a different direction than you want it to. So I'm going to go back in and clean that. This word here is in a script style, so if you've been around for a few months, we've done a lot of script lettering. You can tie in. I would definitely say with chalk designs that the mixed styles are what's really going to make your chalk design stand out, is mixing script and block or serif lettering. So now I can go back and add some of these touches to make your design stand out. Some shadowing and some blending. I'll show you what I like to do. So I'm going to just use the green just for fun. You could go back in with your Q-tip and just kind of blend that just a touch. If you have mixed colors, that can look nice to just blend it just a tiny bit. Play with it and see what you like. And then another shadow that you can add is just a thinner line. And that kind of helps everything stand out a little bit. So I really love the look of traditional chalk, regular chalk, but sometimes it's not always feasible for a project. And then I wanted to show you, now that you have your design, you could also, if I wasn't going to add that highlighted green, I could grab like a wet Q-tip. So I just dampened that down But since we seasoned the back of it, you could go in and just clean up the highlights with a damp Q-tip, and then that will kind of give it some highlighted areas too. This works really well on the slate chalkboards, but I could go in and clean that up. And then since we have that layer of dust behind, and if I use a wet Q-tip, it's going to make that shine just enough that it creates a shadow effect. So that's how you could work through the square design that she's provided. And then we're going to switch gears and use the chalk markers and work on the rectangle chalkboard. Okay, so on the instructions, Purva's provided some tips for blending your chalk markers. So I'm kind of going to play with that. I haven't used chalk markers a lot, just because I personally like the chalk dust look. But let's kind of play with that. So chalk markers are very liquidy. So if you're going to blend some colors together, you're going to want to work quickly. They dry pretty quick, but you can see that's still liquidy. So I'm going to go ahead and do my serif lettering. And I'm going to go in and do my script lettering. Just creating that skeleton. And then I'll go back and thicken the downstrokes. And I'm going to get this pretty juicy so that we can blend some colors like she's describing. So I'm going to work fairly quick here. So if you're new around here, this technique is called foligraphy. I'm just going back and adding thickness to the downstrokes. So kind of where my hand naturally pulls down, I'm just going to add some thickness so that we create some interesting and visually appealing thin and thick lines. Okay. And then let's go in with the brown. I realize green and brown aren't like the ideal colors, but I gave all you guys the bright, pretty colors. So I'm just adding a bit of a shadow on the outside. And then I'm going to grab my Q-tip and just kind of blend it. So definitely with some more contrasting colors, this is going to be really fun, but you get the idea that you could blend those colors together. So if you had like a white and a pink, or a white and a red, it would create a really nice variation. So just a tip there that you can do with the chalk markers. And then as part of her design, she went around and added the rectangle and some doodles. So I'm going to just use this doodle page here and add some designs around the edge. So there's just a quick sample. Again, I just had the green and the brown. You could do it all one color, just white looks pretty with your chalk markers. Or if you're loving the chalk, go out and buy you some more colors and make it really colorful. But there are some samples that Purva has provided. And then I'm just gonna show you how I might walk through a design. Use the back, and again, I was telling you I love the traditional chalk. But you can make just as fun designs with the chalk markers. And some of the chalkboards, like I said, will only allow the chalk markers to write on them. They're almost more like dry erase boards, but black. So you just want to check your surface of what you're getting. So I want a sharp point again. And then I'm going to look at Purva's designs here. Banners always are really fun. Because it's back to school, I might just do something fun along those lines. I know we've got a couple teachers in the group, maybe moms with kids going back to school. They want to design their first day of school board. If you're working on a project that this regular chalk is still too large, there is a chalk pencil. I haven't had much luck with chalk pencils, just for the projects I've used them for. They don't erase well and they leave ghost marks on your chalkboard. So I typically don't reach for them, but there is one that I would recommend over all the others, and it is General's chalk pencil. I'll link it in the links below. But that's the only one I found that I remotely like, or that remotely erases also. But Purva also recommended a chalkboard cleaning kit that's linked in the blog, and I'll also link it below. So if you are loving the chalkboards, this is one that she uses all the time and recommends. Okay, so there I did just a little highlighting by taking the chalk off of the chalkboard, added a fun little banner. There we kind of did some blending just to show you some different styles. Yeah, I might do serif. But then there's just a quick design, and you can see that you could use that on anything. I do a lot of menu boards. All of these banners are great for menu boards, whether you have, just at home on your weekly chalkboard command centers or whatever you're using. lots of fun ideas. So go ahead and play with these. The nice thing is that you can play with them over and over again, and they are going to last forever. So share with us what designs you come up with. We'd love to see. And then I definitely want to hear if you are like team chalk marker or team messy, dusty chalk. Even though it's called dustless chalk, it's still messy, but I just like that kind of textured look. But there are projects where it's going to require chalk markers, so I use them both. And yeah, just share with us what you like, what you come up with, and then you can use your either your chalk markers or your chalk to create the monthly quote for this month. So we will work on that next. So we've included just some fun, bright, colorful pieces of cardstock. And then Purva picked out the quote this month, dream without fear and love without limits. So I've lettered it kind of in one style to show you a way you could lay it out. And then she's lettered it another way, showing you how you could add those shadows and some fun designs. So I would just grab, if you want to start with pencil, you can start with pencil, but I'm just going to use regular chalk and try out this design. Okay, there's just a fun layout with just regular chalk. You could have used your chalk markers too. And then if you do use the regular chalk and you're worried about it getting smudged, because that could happen, you can just use an aerosol hairspray to spray over it to kind of set the chalk. It's not going to be completely permanent, but it does kind of help. If you just accidentally brush it, that hairspray is going to just keep it intact just enough that you won't have that problem. So go ahead and play with the quote. And then the last thing I want to show you is your inks that come in the box this month. Okay, so both of these, if you haven't used them before, can be used as watercolor inks, but also calligraphy inks. Obviously, this one's going to be hard to get on your nib, so I want to show you because I've had some questions. You're going to use it just like a regular watercolor. This is just a watercolor brush where the water's already in it. So I'm just squeezing a couple drops in there to kind of activate the pigment. I'm just going to let it sit for, not long. And then this is a color shift this month. And it has the dropper, so I could put it into a little palette if I needed to, or I can just dip directly into the jar. The pigments are going to settle really fast on this one. And actually, I think it may show up better on black for you guys, just on the camera. It's just so shimmery that I'm thinking that on the camera, this is going to show up better on black. Let's see what it looks like. So you want to shake this quite a bit. If you have a magnetic ink stirrer, they are very handy. These are just, sample sizes, but if you buy metallic ink that is shimmery at all, the pigments are always going to settle. And so a metallic ink stirrer can be really handy. You just drop a magnet in and it sits on the stirrer. And so it's going to constantly stir it so that you don't have to constantly shake it. Okay, oh yeah, you can see that a lot better, I think, on the black. So this month it is a color shift, which usually shows up better on black. but it's going to work pretty on both pages, especially when it dries. So you can use it as a watercolor. That's drying. And then the same with this. Those couple drops has been sitting in there for a minute. So I'm just going to mix it up a bit. And this is going to be just a standard silver, just a really pretty silver. So I am actually really proud of this silver. It's like silver mica, and it comes from like a quarry in France. And I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but after I tested it, I was so excited to send it to you guys. So I think you're going to love it too. So that's the silver, that's the color shift. And I use that just with a paintbrush. And then I'm going to show you how you can use it with your calligraphy nib. So just like watercolor, I'm going to get it on my brush. And then I can just paint it on the back of my nib. You see that? Just so it coats the back like if I were to dip it in the ink. And then I can use it on my nib. And the same with this liquid ink. It's really just the same thing but in liquid form, so you don't have to moisten it. And I just use, I think your nib would fit in there. It's going to take a lot of, if you're using an oblique, it's not going to work. So I just use my dropper, and you don't even have to drop it. I usually just rub it along the back, and it's going to release enough on your nib to use. So if you haven't used those yet, those are some ways that you can use the Handmade Inks. And so this one again is the color shift. It's pretty, it's like a purpley blue. If you put it out in the sun, you're going to see lots of different colors. There it is here, and then this is the silver. So have fun with those and share with us what you decide to make with them. I hope you're loving them. I love making them for you guys. And yeah, okay, it's showing up really good now that it dries. There's a blue and purple. Anyways, have fun with it. Share with us what you make. And go give Purva some love over on her account. She's Magical Lettering. And a shout out to her for sharing her talents with us and all of her chalk lettering tips. Yeah, and I will start working on next month's for you guys. Just a little sneak peek if you watch to the end here. We are going to be doing a fall tutorial on canvas with acrylic paints. So stay tuned for that, and I look forward to seeing all of your creations. Thanks, guys.